It's a special week. But very next week, we'll get back to Tanya. Uh, I don't know, rest of the week, people will tell me if they want, what people are thinking. Here. Parshas Naso starts with the counting of the families of the Levium. Then you have Parshas Soita, which is nice. The Masechah Soita, right? The Parshas Naso, and then the Nesiim, the Agolus that they gave, and then the Karbonos that they gave. So that's also nice. You start Chodesh Nisan with saying the Nasi Echad L'Yoim, and then Pesach and Shavuos have the Chashaychus, and as soon as you finish the Shavuos, so you read again about the Nisim. All have to do with what we're going to learn in this Rashi. At least the beginning and the end of the parasha. Kol b'kudim mishepoket ma'ishavar nasi yisrael l'slavim l'mishbachos l'leischois l'meshlosh shon l'kamayla l'mechamish shon l'kolabot l'avodas avoda v'avodas masa bo'el moed. That this was the bottom line of all the pekudim, all the numbers. They counted them from ben shloshim v'ad ben chamish. And who was counted? Kol abol avodas avoda v'avodas masa. V'pekudim Shmoina Salafim v'chomesh meis Shmoina 8,580. Api Hashem pocket esakad Moshe ish alabados lamaso uvekudav Asher tziva Hashem as Moshe. Rashi says avodas avoda. What's avodas avoda? He ashir b'meltzasayim v'chinoiros. It's the singing through these two instruments called meltzasayim and kinoiros. Shehi avoda la'avoda acheres, as the Gemara says in Erechim. What's avodas masa? That takik mashmoy, carrying, slugging, carrying heavy stuff. We see tak in the Gemara Erchin. The Gemara says, what does avodas avoda mean? It's a funny word. Avodas avoda. So the Gemara says, b'shem Rabbi Yochanan, what is avoda shetzrich avoda? Avoda is ushira. Because there was a chiyuv whenever you brought a korban tzibur to have shira. All korban tzibur had a chiyuv to have. And who sing the Levim? The Levim. Oh, the Talmud also. Huh? The Talmud also, right? Yeah, every korban tzibur, no exception. Only Korban Yochid didn't need Shida. Okay. The thing that right away is noticeable is that Rashi deviated from the Gemara in a very serious way. And Rashi said, the Gemara says, Shida. Shida. And the Gemara, we know, says, the Ikar Shida is Bepeh. The Rambam says that the instruments, the miyuchosim that are not Levim could also play instruments. But it was also for anyone besides a Levi to sing. The Ikar Shida, Ezu Shida is a Bepeh. The Ikar Shida is Bepeh, singing. The instruments, they were an extra. So even if Mshuta Shal Nikra, the singing and the instruments, it's all the same. But Rashi is saying the opposite. Rashi is saying, Hi Ashir, it's not the regular shir of a peh, it's the shir of meltzasayim and kinoidos. Why? And he quotes this Gemara, it's not another. And he's quoting this Gemara. So, and it's not a bomba kasha, because the Rebbe's mahalach is that Rashi is never quoting a Gemara really. Okay, good, but that's half the TED. It's okay, showing it. So the Rebbe's mahalach is always right away takes away the edge of the kasha. Rashi is not busy quoting Gemaras, so he'll say a little more, a little less. Like what the Gemara says, but the hak ufa taka. Why? Why would the Gemara say that avodah is shida, and why would Rashi say Moshe Kapoyer not that way? That avodah is the shir b'meltzasayim b'chinayris. The Rebbe says if you look in Divrei Hayomim, the Rebbe gives a list of half a dozen places where the Torah mentions three basic instruments: nevolim, Kinoidus or Meltzasayim. So if Rashi wants to mention one as a dugma, mention one instrument. There's only three instruments mentioned constantly in Torah Shabbat, which is three instruments: Navolim, Kinoidus, and Meltzasayim. So if you want to mention all three, say all three. If you want to say two, say two. I mean one, say one. 2 out of 3 is funny. Why are you mentioning 2 out of 3 instruments? Okay, that's the Iker Shailus. Klal, it's a little funny because as a Pshuta Shamikra, the child never learned yet that Levim sing. Pashas Baloischa, it's going to say that Nesunim, and Rashi says Lamasa L'Shir. As of now, the child doesn't know yet even. It's like funny, all of a sudden, Mitnamol, we didn't even talk about the singing of the Levim yet. We didn't introduce it yet. Okay. But let's read quickly the Mizrahi and the Ben Machai. It's a little the Mizrahi Avoidi Ashir B'Meltzasayim B'Knorish Avoida Laledas V'Hedis Pirish Ashir Shalavim Mishonim B'Esek Akoroba Avoida Achas. There's the shear of the Levim, and there's the Karovas Akarbonis through the Koinim. It's avoid shell avoid. That's avoid is avoid. It's avoid in order to allow the other to memachshir the other avoid. Avoid loshen va'avoid is mas soivel came. But Rashi doesn't want to say that avodas masa means the same thing. Shimkein yitzarek laparash avodas masa, avoda lim masa. The kilo there's a prep for the masa. Yev shelafarish ken kein lamasa avoda cheres. What kind of prep is there for the masa? Well, what's kind of there is no prep. That's his basic thing. That's what he's saying. The Rebbe has a little bit of tzorachim. What do you mean there is no prep? We know in the end of the parsha that the Nisim brought them wagons, and the Gershon and Merori got the wagons. So maybe the prep was that they picked up the curtains and they picked up the kroshim and they put it to load. So the load and unloading is the avoida, and the masa is moving the wagons. Okay, so let's put this sorachin on hold. Let's jump to the Ben Bachai. La'avod avodas avodas zeh shir she'avoda la'avoda acheres ve'akarbonos. V'chein u'omer yivdu es Hashem b'simch. U'posek molu she'koyda avoda l'shir hu k'meshikosa b'divrei hayomim v'hameshoyrim b'nei osav al ma'modem eim lahem la'osor me'al avodosa. So we see in divrei hayomim clearly that the meshoyrim were called avoda. Singing in the Beis Hamikdash for the Levim was on avoida. It's like the Fedish Apostle. Ashir Hazehu ben Noivel, Meltzasayim, Vayimim Shiris was minister Kachborch B'Shas HaKarbonis. They would, what kind of songs would they say? Shiris was Zimris, Roman Rezal, Kamadina, Kinor, Shiva, Shembar, Service Mach, Zantik, Soiva, Sheva, Chem David Ahime, Sheva Bayim, the most Mashiach Shemoyne, Alatzech Lashminis, Nima Shminis, Wasa Lobi Asora, Shenemer benevel also zamrabay. Goemel also vale novel. V'chein dorshu razal b'mesach tzerichem b'perik ein be'erichem b'soifer. V'bir inyan, why is it that that one instrument, in the beginning there was an instrument with 7, the Moshe Mashiach will be an instrument with 8 strings, and Lo'olam Haba, even later, in a later stage in Moshe Mashiach, it'll be 10 strings. He says, so this is like Molly Vigodish about why 7 strings, 8 strings, 10 strings, that every talk about all the time. To Teraba or Teraba Sogba to Sepas Maila. Now the most we can understand is within nature. And the cycle of nature is 7. So the excitement of Avodas Hashem is in all 7 levels, but not more. Mashiach will be Bechina Shminis, which is Lamayla Mateva. That's why it's 10. That David HaMelech made a big deal out of the Shira. The whole Tehillim, they made a big deal out of the Shira.
Because he was
Yeah. Let's read quickly. V'hinu nechel b'shmana chalokim, mispar ben Hashem b'shmana chalokim, v'otzon heiman yedusen, eisen azrochiri arba, v'levi hoy sham, shishmoi ben, arei chamisha, v'lagitis, b'shpachas, lagitis, b'shpachas, oy v'de'edem, arei shisha, b'nei koyrech yeshiva, v'b'nei Moshe rishmoina, ketfilu l'Moshe, nyana l'vnei Moshe. So we find in the Tehillim, Shmoina, different groups. There's Lamatzech, Liosov, Liyedusan, La'esan, La'ezrochi, Livnei Koirach, Tfila L'Moshe, eight different type of songs. V'oy Meshem Gamke b'Shmoina Kev, Elohim, Al Naginas, Al Machlas, Al Alamashir, V'amasa Shenemar, V'chinyanoi, Usar, Alavim, V'masa Yosser, V'masa Kimei Hu, L'kol Chozav V'gavoya, Losh Avisas Koil, V'darshan Azal, V'sachas Erchem, Tikr Yosser, Yoshir, V'masa, V'tziv, Lavad Avedis, Avedis Masa, V'alanachilos, V'losh Acholil, V'amachal, V'machlil, V'ashoshanim, V'alagitis, V'lashnims. Okay, so there's 8 types of songs and 8 types of instruments. Okay, let's put aside the paper. And back again, the Rebbe's kashas was simple. The Gemara says, Avodas Avodah means to sing. And the Ikir is Taki Chazal say that Ein Shir Ela B'Peh. And that was really where it counted, that it has to be a Levi. Why is it Rashi says not that way? Rashi says, Ashir B'Mel Tzasayim B'Kinoides. Why is it Rashi single out Dafka these 2 instruments? So in order to understand this, the Rebbe goes into a general thing over here. I mean, we're going to learn the Likkutei, the Shabbos. Every year you learn the Ma'am, you start. Naso Sroish B'nei Gershon Gamhe. Like, it's not fear. B'nei Gershon Gamhe. B'nei Kahos, these are, the true blue. They're the Meyachos. And B'nei Naso Sroish B'nei Gershon Gamhe. And Bamarori, nothing. Not fear, not nice. What's going on? So there's 3 dargas. There's dargas of the highest level of kahos, and also the barbanel. Meforshim say it could say whenever you say counting is tifkedwise to count it. Even in this pasuk, it says kol hapekudim asher pokat, and then it says v'yuk pekudeyim shmeines alofim whatever v'api Hashem pokadoisim pekudim asher shiva Hashem Moshe. Counting is pekida. And why does it say Naso Seroish? The Meforshim say because Naso means Losh Shivas. Naso Seroish. Oh. Pick him up. Put him on center stage. Pick him up. So, Kehos, they were picked up on center stage. Why? Because they carried the Oren Kodesh. And they carried the Menorah and the Kalim of the Beis HaMikdash. Therefore, Gershon, Gameh. And Merari, they were the schleppers. Exactly. Because the Frierdiker Rebbe, when he did, even though it's an acronym, Kahos is an acronym,
you look at the deed.
However, if you look closely at every single one of the acronyms and the Vertlach, the Frierdiker Rebbe, there's always a chap. There's always, without exception, there's always like, So Kahos is an acronym for a publishing company called Karnei Hoi Toida. Frierdiker came to America and he opened a publishing house called Kahos. Karnei Hoi Toida. But you think for a second, you chap why? Because Kahos, the Bnei Kahos, was Naso Serosh. Why? Because they were carrying the order. That key is Siyas Arosh that they picked up. So that's why when he opened the publishing house, the printer said this. So it's the Indian of Kahos, because the Indian from the Oren, the Luchas, Gatlichkeit, whatever. You didn't understand that. That's why he called it Kahos. Even though the acronym was, I probably started with this. He wanted to call the publishing company Kahos, and then he thought, Karnei Hoi Toida, whatever, who might this? Because you're right. Okay. So the Meforshim say a nice thing. Kahos, they have the main Nesiyas Rosh. Yeah. This is the true blue. And Gershon is Gamhe and tagalongs and Merori flat. It's a nice shot. It's a little offensive, but it's a nice shot. But the problem is not that it's offensive. The problem is that it doesn't go in Rashi. And Rashi repeats many times. Rashi says that why were they counted from 30 to 50? Rashi says again and again. Rashi says, Naso by Bnei Gershon, it says, Kamoshe v'tzicha b'nei kos, liris kama yesh yigi l'chlal avoida. And Rashi says, mona mehem aruim la'avodas masa, hapochishim v'en shloishim lo nisma l'koichem. V'yoyser ben chamishim koichem makchish meyata. The Rashi makes it very clear that the counting had nothing to do with putting them on center stage. It says Naso, shot, koi Naso, whatever. Synonymous. The two words mean the same things. Look at the source, you find them in the same thing. He says why we counted them is because we want to know how many strong men, how many able-bodied men we want to build a sukkah, right? So the little kindlach come out with a plastic hammer. They want to help you build a sukkah. Well, what could they do with the plastic hammer? They want to saying Tehillim that they stand on the side and the boards don't go flying in them. Then you have the Bobby and the Zaidi come out. They also want to help. You're also hoping that the boards are not going to go flying in them. Who are you going to ask to help you build the sukkah? Not someone too old and not someone too young. So the Torah says that a ben koyach is from ben shloshim but ben chamish. That's when a person is the optimal of koyach. Before that, he doesn't have the full koyach, and after that is makrish. That's why they're counting them. So to say, why would it be a difference between Gesh and Kahos and Merori? So the Rebbe says that the emphasis of Pshuta Shamikra, the child will already understand. Who is carrying on their shoulders the whole time? Kahos. Gesh and Merori, they're not carrying that much. They taka carry, but they're carrying it a little bit till they get into the wagon. They're putting it on the wagon. They're not carrying it. Elama, even a child understands that Gershon carries more than Merori. Why? Merori's job was to carry the crushing. Gershon's job was to carry the curtains. Besides a technical difference that, think about it, for Gershon, when they come with the wagons to a new place, Gershon lands the wagons, they pick up, click, 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 clack, click, 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 click. They put all the things, then they establish the chutzim. The Bnei Gershon now have to come with the curtains. They don't get to park their wagons right at now they're outside the chutzim. They have to pick it up. Besides this technical difference, there's more of a difference. When you have boards on a wagon, right? And you pick them up. So you pick up the thing, it's on a wagon. It's on a wagon. Here, you pick it up, click, clack. When you have a curtain, there's no click, clack on a curtain. It's a huge thing. It's the oil moed is big, and now you have to get the curtains up and around. I'm not sure how they did it. They didn't have what's it called? Those things that fly in the air. What are they called? Drones. Drones. They didn't have. I can tell you for sure they didn't have drones. So how did they pick them up? So they had ladders. They had ropes. They must have had a technique of how they made it work. But it wasn't just simple that the click clack that they took the crusher off, put it down. One man picks it up. One man's holding it. Click click. It wasn't heavy. It was heavy, Rashi said. Okay, but still, the Gershon, you're talking about masa. They had a lot to carry. They had a few guys on ladders on the right and a few guys on ladders on the left, and these guys were schlepping it, and then they threw it over, and the other guys caught it, and they had a certain more of a masa. So if you think about strength, so who needed to be the biggest Bali Koyach carrying? Is Kahos. Kahos did most of the carrying. Even though the Kroshim are the heaviest, but the Kroshim weren't carried on the shoulders. They were carried on wagons. So Kahos did most of the carrying. Gershon did a little less, but still did a little more manual labor. And Merori did the least of Masa. So therefore, when we're counting people, because we want to know people that are fit to work, that are balikoyach, because under 30 you're weak, and under 50 and above 50 you're weak. So the main likud of the counting of that age, not old Levine. There was a separate count that they counted old Levine, but here they're counting the people that are fit to work. So the people that we need most fit, that we need to send. Who gets the first ticket to go to the gym? Bnei Gahos. Second, Bnei Gersh. The people that were waiting the last to get into the gym is Bnei Merori. Because the Bnei Merori don't need the gym as much as Bnei Gersh. Bnei Gahos need it the most. So therefore, it's a nicht so schwer. The Aaron carried them. First of all, there's a medrash that the Aaron carried them, which is a medrash Chazal, which not necessarily should shamik. And secondly, there's the Menoidus and other things which didn't carry them. Only by the Aaron that says that. So that's that. Now, what's bothering Rashi? It says here that they were counted for avodas avoda and avodas mas. Besides the fact that we didn't hear yet that the avodim that they sing, singing is not such a hard thing to do. Din also. The din was that after age of 50, they were still allowed to sing. They were not allowed to be working with carrying, but they were allowed to sing yet. So Bosidish Pshat, Rashi says, so the Rebbe says like this, in Tanakh we find three types of kelim. There is Meltzasayim, Chinoidos, and there's one more, Nevel. So Nevolim is all kinds, the Rebbe says it's hard to know exactly, it's like Bechais of 8 instruments. The Rebbe says the Pashtus, Nevolim is a wind instrument, like a flute, and many other wind instruments, saxophone, whatever. We don't know. Khalil? Okay. Not the name of Kinoidos is string instruments. Right. Meltzasayim is bang, bang, bang instruments, like a drum, like these two things that. Symbol. Yeah, all kinds of banging instruments. So these are the three instruments we're talking about. Yaron, you come to the right moment. We're talking about the different instruments, musical instruments in the Beis Hamikdash. So even though the Mashal, the Rabbeinu Achai says there's 8 instruments, but it's nicht gestir. The pasuk mentions 3 because the pasuk is when the pasuk says navel. You don't know what the navel looks like. It's a category. We don't know. It's a category. Navel means a wind instrument. Kinoidus means a string instrument. Meltzasayim means a banging instrument. These are the 3 instruments. 7 or 8 or 10. It could be 7. It could be 8. It could be 10. And the string instruments is a ribui in this world. It's a ribui type of, just because. And the Tehillim, the Lubavitch Tehillim that they publish now with English in the last 20 years in Kaos, there's a beautiful picture, or not only Kaos, other publishing companies, that, it's not like we ever did an archaeological dig and we found in the palace of David HaMelech that it looks like this or it looks like that. We don't know how. We haven't found it. We don't know what it looks like. Oh, it looks in the picture, right? Pointed bottom versus the curved bottom. So which one is right? Which one is the So the answer is we don't know. The answer is we don't know. But we know one thing, Dr. Rebbe. We know that navel means a wind instrument, kinoidus means a string instrument, meltzasayim means a banging instrument. And within each one, there could be multiple. And lav dafke mitzad the din, that made a difference. If a person came up, if Lamazon guitars, guitar is lav dafke an instrument that existed, Bisman, yeah. If you're looking for it. Lav dafke, they have it, Bisman Shabbos Hamikdash Shoyakayim. So when Mashiach is going to come, not necessarily going to say, oh, Abba, hey Chodesh also min HaTorah. If it's a string instrument, it's a string instrument. A banging instrument, they say, oh, drum, no drums in the Beis Hamikdash. Don't mehakminish and cup with the drum of the Beis Hamikdash. Why? They didn't have it Bisman Shabbos Hamikdash Kaim. No. There's a now that we know there's 3 types of instruments, now we understand why Rashi ignores one. Yeah, pictures. We want a picture.
Harp. The harp or the lyre. Okay. How you pronounce it? versus the resounding cymbals and flint crashing.
So the Rebbe says, one second, Lashon. Rashi ignored the wind. Why? Because the wind is talking not an avoida that you need a bal koyach, you need a bal moyach. It's very tricky. Just like with shofar, we say it's chochma ve'ena malacha. It's not. It's sometimes you have a person that they take a shofar, red in the face. Kenish wasn't shofar. It's moyach more than koyach. It's a certain koyach, but it's more moyach than koyach. The wind instruments. If you take a flute right now and you try to blow, you're going to get zero sound. Not you're going to get a bad sound. You're going to get zero sound. But if you're going to take a drum and start banging, you'll get sound. Maybe you're not going to get fancy. No one's going to hire you for the next simcha, but you're going to get sound. If you take a guitar and you start strumming, might not sound so schmuck, but you'll get sounds out of it. So that's why by shofar we say it's chochma ve'ena malach. A string instrument and banging instrument is avoida with midiyadayim. Of course, it's avoida with yadayim. Therefore, that was part of the nekuda of counting them. It's avoida, and avoida masa. It's a chelik of avoida. Mashenke, the wind instruments. That's not what we're talking about. We were counting now to know who's a bal koyach. The Rebbe says it could be according to Rashi. There's a chidush here in halacha. What happens, a kohen that turns 51 and he still could sing very nice? He's allowed to sing, but he's not allowed to play instruments. According to the Rashi, the Rebbe says, it could be that the Levi that turned 51 and now he wants to play an instrument, so take a string instrument, they won't let him. And the banging instrument, they won't let him. But a flute, they'll let him, because that's not a chelik. Because over here, it's like shira bepeh. Has nothing. When we say kosher is makrish, is only lagabe avodas yadayim, not lavodas peh. You want to say something? It's all. Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
I understand the terms of schlepping, the crushing and other things. So you said that between 30 and 50, that's when a person's in their best shape. But playing an instrument is not based on how strong you are. So why are we saying that they're the same standard?
What instrument do you play?
I don't play anything.
How do you know?
Well, you're not carrying the drums around. You're playing it. It's children.
No, but we say, well, it's a dime, and it's a dime that's a big and heavy. So we know it's a void.
Who plays guitar here? No one? Anyone play any instrument here? Huh? Okay, well, ask someone that knows how to play. It takes koyach in the stomach. I would say it takes koyach. One thing that I know does not take that much koyach and takes tremendous amount of moyach is a flute. Because when I was a child, Piamenta, Avi Piamenta came and started teaching us. We got 2 lessons. Yeah, we got 2 lessons. Then it fell apart. And this I know that it's nothing to do with koyach. It has everything to do with moyach. You push it. You have to blow. It's not like if you put it in your mouth, you blow hard, you get no sound. Yes. You're not gonna get sound. I'm telling you, take a flute, put it to your mouth, and blow. You're gonna get zero sound.
Or trumpet.
You're gonna get zero sound. There's a certain you have to know how to blow in a certain frequency to get the sound. Mashenkin, these things that are with the hand, it's the drums, it's the hands.
You had the side
strings
or the recorder
front. Yeah. So therefore, that's what the Rebbe says. That could be a chiddush.
So much money.
Huh?
How come they get so much money for one half an hour? It's not that 6, 7 hours. Because he's the what? 7 hours. He's
a concept half an hour.
Why do the Mexicans that build the foundation of your house why do they get $7 an hour and the contractor gets $1,000 an hour? So one guy is using moyach, the other guy is using fight.
But
the kasha is a teretz.
The singing, I don't see moyach, but singing. Okay, so
you don't see moyach singing?
There's a single lead singer.
It's a lot of money. What are you talking about?
Side singers and a choir, they don't make so much. Yeah.
No, and also they train their voices. It's a chochmah. It's a chochmah. So then, okay. So let's summarize. That's the teretz of the kasha. So that's why the Rashi says different taking the Gemara. The Rashi Taka says different than the Gemara. Rashi says, because over here we're talking about counting people that are able-bodied to work, to schlep, and just like Taka, of course, Kahas are the biggest schleppers, and Gershon are secondary schleppers, and Marori are the smaller schleppers. It's all about how much koyach you have to do manual labor. So therefore, when we say avodas masa, which avodas Rashi Taka says avodah, but Rashi doesn't make sense to them. It means that it should be singing. Therefore, Rashi says no. It means the two instruments or the two prototype of instruments that are included many other instruments that you have to do with your hands. Ataka, indeed, if you did something with your mouth, it's not what we're talking about. Okay, let's talk about the chassidus. There's a lot of chassidus that goes into this.
Somebody went ahead and put them for timing, there's some English and they made them. Did something with the food, not me.
No, the truth is, I don't know, the guy of Yilas and another Shaiba. Yilas curl my malavereach. The Shaiba is the guy of the Levim. At what age do we say that they're not going to do anymore? So we say 50, but they're allowed to sing after 50 until their voice is still good. As long as the Rebbe says that they're probably allowed to play flute. They're just not allowed to play guitar or play drums. Okay. The Roy Avodas Hashem. What's the Chassidus? Chassidus says, before we get about the Chassidus, we're coming from Shavuos, and Shavuos is a Shaykhis to the Baal Shem Tov. Even though we don't have the Beis Hamikdash and we don't have singing, but Chassidim we have B'shas Tefillah Medavant Medanagina. So there's a story of the Baal Shem Tov. One of the favorite Baal Shem Tov stories, even though it's not from a Chabad source, but it's a beautiful story. Shem Tov came to, when he was a Tzaddik Mister, he came to a town, and he comes at Akrechma, and he asked the kids, "Where's your father?" It's in the afternoon. He's davening. Long time. He finishes, he comes out, he apologizes. He said, "I'm sorry, I'm a Ish Poshut. I don't know, it's very confusing. I don't know what to daven, which day. So I go to work because I can't afford. I have to go. When I come back from work, I open the siddur and I say from the first page to the last page. Because otherwise, very confusing. I don't know what to say. Why not?" He starts from Moedani and he finishes by Shaina Rabbah. So some Chastei says everything. He says the whole tefillah gegangen. So it takes him a long time. So the Baal Shem Tov feels very bad for him. Baal Shem Tov says, "If you want, I'll teach you how to daven." Baal Shem Tov took a paper, cut it up into little pieces, to little strips, and he writes, "Benchen in Yiddish, Benchen, davening, das Yom Tov davening," and he puts in, he shows him here, Shachris, this is Mincha, this is the Benchen, this is for Yom Tov davening, this is for Shaina Rabbah, this is for Purim, this is for Pesach. Huh? Yeah, shows him everything. And he reviews it with him at night. The next morning, he reviews it with him again. He's so happy. Now he knows how to daven. Baal Shem Tov left, and he picked up the siddur. Shoyd v'shem. The siddur went flying out of his hand, and all the papers went flying out all over the place. If the Baal Shem Tov only used, what are those things called with a little bit of sticky on it? Yeah, post-it. Yeah. If he only had the post-it, the Baal Shem Tov would get in good. The papers were loose, they went flying all over, and he was so upset. Now he wants to find the Baal Shem Tov to get to teach him again. Baal Shem Tov left already. So he's running, he's trying to find the Baal Shem Tov. And he sees from far the Baal Shem Tov is very far, and there's a river. How do you get over the river? So Baal Shem Tov takes his handkerchief out of his pocket, puts it on the river, he steps on the handkerchief, and he scoots over to the other side. So the Yid comes there, and he's standing there and standing. Doesn't know if he could do the same trick or not. So he's a little careful. He takes the handkerchief, he puts it out of the water, he puts one foot, another foot, it's a little wobbly. But that guy can do it, why can't I do it? He gets on, and the scooter moves. Gegangen. He goes over the other side. He's running after the Baal Shem Tov until he catches the Baal Shem Tov. He starts to cry. He says, Rebbe, all the papers are flying out of the siddur. I'm totally confused. I'm back at square one. So the Baal Shem Tov said, how did you get here? How did you get over the river? He said, what do you think? I didn't see what you did. I did the same thing. So the Baal Shem Tov said, I did the same thing. You should continue davening the way you daven until now. Because the Eibishter loves your tefillah. Keep up. Don't fix what's not broken. So, Gershon Kohos Merori is 3 dargis in tefillah. There is, it says, Mashcheni acherecha narutze, v'yani amelech chadorov, which has to do with Shavuos. Chazal say, Mashcheni acherecha narutze, the Eibishter first called the Yid, then acherecha narutze lashon rabeh. And then v'yani amelech chadorov. So there's one thing is that we want that Dafka Nefesh Bahamas should have its Avos Hashem. Why? Because the pasuk says Rav was b'shoresh b'koyach Nefesh Bahamas and velocity. When he does a title, it's with a lot of fanfare, it's a lot of tayas. There's a lot of energy in the Nefesh Bahamas. So Acharech and Arutza, we want that also the Nefesh Shalakis should get into that, to become a mahalach, b'li that he should also run with an unbelievable narutza, that also Nefesh Shalakis, and then once the Nefesh Shalakis gets into the Sahih, Mihiluch, he's also running b'li. So then he's Nasal the Shorshe, Behemis the Shorshe, it's much higher than Nefesh Bahamas, and he's Nasal to the Biyane Melachador of Lashon Yochid. The Rebbe says that's the difference between Gershon Kos and Merori. Merori is their main thing was Mishmeres Maso. Mishmeres Maso. Their main thing was with the Agolos. Nefesh Bahamas. Then you get the Nefesh Bahamas to run. Then there was Gershon. Gershon was a step higher. They made that also Nefesh Kis should run together. So therefore it was Gamhi. B'nei Kahos. Therefore, by them it says, by them it was Avodas and Avodas Mas. Then there was Kahos. Kahos is the ultimate of the Blik Vula, the Nefesh Shalakis, which has no Ashaychus to Agolas. They didn't have Agolas. They didn't use Agolas. They didn't need the Nefesh Bahamas even. Because they were the union of Ivan and Melech Hador, the union of Torah, which is connected to Chabat and Torah, Chag HaShavuos, which we're now in the 7 days connected to Chag HaShavuos. Maybe shall help them that we should daven, and we should have a chayas in davening. We should have Avos Hashem, B'dargis Merori, B'dargis Gershon, and B'dargis Kahos.
The guy lived in Bilskin, he got a back at the dogs. Why you? I came to tune you, yeah. He said, don't call you. He said, yeah, but what you made us for? It's good. All the neighbors call. And similar, so I had that story, the Baal Shem Tov, I had kind of vaguely somewhere in the back of my mind when there's a single lady in the community here, and she's like, I'm going to go to the OL 60 days straight, and it's going to, and it's going to be a thing for a shidduch or whatever. So I was like,
why do you think
thinking
go
on
60
one
days
hand,
straight?
I don't know that there's any Indian for that, but I'm like, who am I? Maybe God loves that. Who am I to tell her, don't do it? There's no Indian for that. Kind of like the Baal Shem Tov will say, but it's with all the pages blowing out. I wanted to tell her, learn Sichos, learn around about you, like a fucking time, but well, maybe the Rebbe, maybe the Eibishter.
Okay.
Loves it.
Okay, very good.
She's still single.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Well, you never know. She'll go. Maybe one time we'll help you. Shkar for joining. I get to Nacht. And I get in Shabbos.